Broadcasting live from the Buckhead Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Legal Experts.
All right, Rich Casanova here, sitting in for Miss Emily-Rowell for Atlanta Legal Experts radio show. We have a great lineup of stellar guests here joining us in the studio. And we want to first thank our sponsors for making Atlanta Legal Experts possible, brought to you in part by these fine sponsors, Peachtree Offices. From virtual offices, meeting rooms, day offices, to full turnkey, ready-to-move-in executive suites, visit peachtreeoffices.com. And to a thank you and shout-out goes, I don't know if they still do shout-outs or not, but we'll find out on that. But 3A Law Practice Management, devoted to helping lawyers start and grow their practice. Check out their Lawyer Survival Kit and all their services at 3alawpracticesmanagement.com. And finally, to our friends at Atlanta's John Marshall Law School, educating attorneys for over 80 years, and they're ranked number 4 of the most diverse law schools in America. Now accepting applications for spring semester 2016. Visit johnmarshall.edu. All of our sponsor information will be found at atlantalegaalexperts.com. And once again, Rich Casanova here for today's show. And we want to just say a quick hi and introduction to those folks joining us in the studio. We'll jump into our first guest. But first joining us in the studio, we have Edwin, and I was practicing his name, Scalar. All right, I got a head nod, so I'm guessing that's I got a green light. Edwin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, and you'll be chatting a little bit later in the segment about what area of practice, and tell us a little bit of a teaser for your segment.
We do general business litigation, including securities, intellectual property, legal malpractice.
All right. And how long have you been wearing that hat?
35 years.
Well, so you're definitely, and you put the expert in Atlanta Legal Experts, I would think so. There'll be a test a little bit later. Are you ready for that?
We'll find out.
Bring it on. He says, he gives me a nod like, are you kidding me? All right. So, and also joining us in the studio, Jonathan Mason. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
All right. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. And you have an interesting bio. We don't want to give away too much information, but tell us a little bit about what you might be chatting about this morning.
Well, I'm going to be talking about, I consider cool things like entertainment law and trademark law, especially as it relates to entertainment, sports, music, things like that. I always loved music and set out to go in that direction once I started, my career. Yeah. And so I've been able to work that in.
Well, you definitely have an interesting story, according to your bio, at least, whatever. So we'll find out a little bit more about that. And I know you specialize in entertainment, but in business, I'd be interested conversations about the difference in trademark as opposed to copyrights or registrations, right? Is that in your wheelhouse? Or
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm sure Edwin could probably chime in on that, too.
But right, perfect,
we'll definitely get that covered today.
Okay. Well, if not during your segment, maybe during the round table.
Right.
But joining us first up in the studio, we want to welcome Lisa Siegel to the show. And good morning, first of all.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have a great show here this morning. Let me tell our folks a little bit about yourself, and feel free to add or elaborate on. So your law practice is dedicated to the representation of the injured and disabled. You've been involved in trial work during your entire 26-year career, successfully handled litigation proceedings in hundreds of cases, hearings and administration matters, and your law firm is located here in Atlanta, and again, focusing on the representation of adults and children, but specifically in Social Security disability cases.
That's right. I think you've got that.
Right.
Sounds like a lot, but that's correct.
Hit on all the cylinders. Yeah. It's that's a lot to wrap up in a 26-year career. There's a lot of stories, right?
Well, that is correct. I have stayed primarily in some facet of healthcare law.
Okay.
So I got a start in insurance defense. I've worked in Washington D.C. with healthcare. Plaintiff's personal injury, and out of the plaintiff's personal injury practice grew my disability practice. So now I focus 100% on Social Security disability as well as private insurance disability.
Well, any of those, you talk in the healthcare industry, disability, insurance, litigation issues.
Gets complicated, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated than radio. All we have to do is turn on this on-air light. We're good to go.
I don't know. You're scaring me in here with all these buttons.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts, but yeah.
We'll just stick to our own expertise.
Yeah. Well, so far, no one's actually been injured during the recording of our show, so just relax, whatever, yeah. So talk to us about the difficulty in winning a Social Security disability in terms of benefits today. What
Well,
are some challenges with that, I guess? Or?
there's a lot of misconceptions. Many people think that you'll always be denied. That's not the case. You're not always denied. In many cases, our office handles from application through the hearing level, so we see approvals at application. That does happen. It tends to be a certain type of case that's going to get approved right away. We can usually pinpoint that. You should know that less than 40% right now in Georgia are being approved on the first application. So you're going to get a denial statistically more likely than not.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some family members in a situation, and it is, I don't know if it's a misnomer or just like you said, the misperception, but it does seem like many people are denied, but it is the highest percentage in that first round. And what do you attribute that to? Is that kind of built into the system to kind of a little bit of vetting,
that is
filtering
correct.
process?
I would say that there's a certain, without getting too complicated, the initial application is geared to people that are going to meet a medical listing. So on paper, they're going to have a condition that's going to already be considered disabling. Once the decision-making process becomes more subjective, it probably will end up being at a hearing level in front of an administrative law judge. That process can take almost 2 years.
Wow. Well, feel free to get complicated on this, unless you see me nodding off or whatever. Yeah, then you want to pull it back a little bit. Yeah. So what is some of the top reasons claims are denied or approved? I guess
claims are denied usually because there's not enough medical evidence. So one of the challenges in this area is many people lose their job because they can't work for medical reasons. Then they lose their health insurance. Then they can't treat with the doctor. Then they don't build a health care record to show that they're disabled. And then they go into Social Security or with a private insurance to apply for disability with a pretty thin medical record. So that is always one of the biggest challenges because it's a catch-22 situation.
And it's the proverbial just spiral effect and snowball that right one triggers another, and it's hard to kind of
people, you lose your income, you lose your health care. With the Affordable Care Act, I'm seeing that's actually really helping some people who have lost their jobs and are able to buy insurance in the private market or help out. Many times families have to step in and help. I mean, it really, people need a safety net. Sometimes the safety net is the people that love you, so that is often the most helpful. But to get back to your question, which was why are people not approved, sometimes not having enough medical evidence. Some people may not be there yet. Another process is a lot of people maybe misinterpret what the rules are with Social Security. Social Security is actually a pretty tough standard to meet.
Okay.
Sorry, it's awfully early.
So
I only had one cup of coffee this morning, so I'm sorry about that.
So they're not just giving out money or whatever. Yeah, you can't walk just down there. I got a Social Security number.
Another misperception, right, is that it's a bank that spits out money like an ATM. It doesn't. It's a tough standard. The standard is you cannot do any work in the national economy. So even, for example, yourself, Rich, at a radio station, you might not be able to do radio if you lose your voice. But that doesn't mean you can't do something else. And there are lots of other jobs out there, and Social Security employs, consultants, vocational experts, to find other jobs that you might be able to do, even with your medical limitations.
So a point of clarification, I don't know if that's a legal term, but it sounds good, right? Yeah. So you're calling what I'm doing work? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it looks like fun, though.
It is, yeah. Don't tell other people, whatever, yeah. So talk to us about the main differences of a disability case involving, the elderly or adults as opposed to children. Some main distinctions.
There are. There's really two areas of law. Many people don't realize that children are entitled to disability. At
any age, basically?
Children stop being children at 18, so
right,
there is that legal. I hate to throw the law in there on you, but that does work that way. The children's program, Children's Disability, is a means-tested program. That means that it only applies to low-income individuals. The reason there is a children's disability program is many families with disabled children, one of the parents isn't able to work. To give an example, a child with hemophilia, for example, which is a blood condition in which your blood doesn't clot, many daycare programs and schools can't take that child, so that child has to becomes a home-based child, which will often preclude employment for a parent. So for a low-income family, that can be devastating. For that reason, there is a children's disability program. Now, your question was, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, Social Security evaluates adults as to whether or not they can work. Since we know children don't work and we don't like children to work, Social Security evaluates children as to whether or not their 6 domains of happiness and livelihood are affected in some severe way. For example, their ability to learn, their ability to interact with others, their health and well-being, their ability to care for themselves. Social Security has a six domain area evaluation on that. But again, that's a severe test for disability for children as well.
Yeah, I mean, as harsh as it may sound, you really do need those kind of checks and balances in there so that we're just not end up paying 90% in taxes, whatever, right?
Well, unfortunately, many people fear that we are overpaying in the disability program.
Really?
Well, it seems like the climate sometimes is that everyone's, and even my own clients sometimes think everybody's getting a check but me, when in fact Social Security has been really tight these last few years. It's been very difficult for even good cases to get through the system, and for people that need the benefits and needed them yesterday to be awarded benefits.
Well, I think without getting political, I think most people would feel if someone is at a severe disadvantage, that's what kind of that safety net where we come into play as all citizens of this great country. But at the same time, you do need those safeguards in there, right, so that people just don't take advantage of the system. And
certainly. And one thing that I think adding to the misperception is in terms of fraud in the system, I can't say that I see a lot of that.
Really? You see a lot on TV, whatever. There's always those investigative reporters, and they have cameras, and the person on crutches, and then they're out playing hockey or whatever.
It's a great story, and people like to read it, and 60 Minutes does a good job.
It's not as prevalent as...
Well, listen, there's going to be fraud in any program.
Yeah.
I think the fraud is running about 4%. They're certainly working on it, and they put a lot of effort into it. And I'm against fraud. I'm not advocating fraud.
Raise your hand if you're in favor of fraud.
It ruins it for my clients who need it. Absolutely. It makes the system harder, and that's really unfair. But, in terms of the people, what I see, Rich, a lot of people who really needed it yesterday and are suffering and don't have money and are getting close to homelessness and basically are walking with walkers and wheelchairs and have paid into the system, worked hard, maybe not made it to full retirement age, but are 55 and 56 working in a hard, heavy construction, heavy exertion labor area and are no longer able to make it for a vast variety of chronic diseases, can't get Social Security disability because of so many protections built into the program. So I would like to see that loosened up a little bit so that the deserving people can actually not be moving into our homeless shelters or having to decide what they're going to eat every day.
Right. 4% is lower than I expected, but...
that's reported on the Social Security website. So
still a little relative because it's kind of like they say FedEx and UPS, they operate at, it's crazy, insane percentages, 99 point, some nines and a bunch of digits after that. But when you roll it across the entire platform, it's a staggering amount of packages that are not delivered. So that 4% across the entire program still could be pretty substantial, but they're trying to, I don't know if you know where that typically falls. Has there been a high point during the last 26 years that you can think, or has it been lower?
That may be fair. There may be some points in which Social Security's gotten more proactive. Certainly funding for Social Security would help. Congressional funding would certainly help Social Security have programs so that they could fight any fraudulent things. It isn't so much in the initial phase. There's a very tough standard to get Social Security disability. I suspect what happens is that people are receiving disability and then they're fined accommodating employment, might go back to work and forget to tell Social Security that they're also drawing a paycheck.
Forget in air quotes or whatever, yeah.
So catching those people who have gone back to work could be an effort. But, that takes money, too. That creates funding to
like you said, it's that catch-22. It's like you have to raise money to chase the money, and then at some point, not that you write it off, but it becomes a law of diminishing
recently returns. Of interest, Social Security spent more money chasing money than they recollected. So
see, there you go.
That wasn't an effective use of our taxpayers' dollars.
Right. But if you don't do some of that chasing, then people, the word gets out on the street, right?
You don't want to be lax about it. No.
I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions, right? So let's move on to so someone that's listening right now, and they have a family member themselves, considering that they may be in a position to draw on those disability benefits. What are some advice that you would give them? Some points.
Well, listen, it's always good to educate yourself as to what you need to do. It's a daunting process. It can be difficult for anyone at any level of educational background or expertise. It can be difficult to get through the process. Social Security's done a really good job with its website that you can apply online, so that's fantastic. That website is ssa.gov. But sometimes people still are unclear. Our law firm does represent people at the initial application. We're always happy to help people through the initial application. We file it online. We file it on paper. If you get If you get a denial, you're going to have to file an appeal. You've got 60 days. Many people miss those deadlines. It's really critical once you've got an application pending that you stay on top of it, keep up with your paperwork. If you start getting denials, you're going to want to contact an attorney.
Yeah, that was my next question. You may have alluded to it a little bit. At what point do you typically come into the process? You mentioned at the beginning, but at any juncture, or
well, I love to get in at the beginning because frankly, I can keep the car out of the ditch. So I don't like it when the car goes in the ditch, but I'll take those cases too.
We switched gears all of a sudden. I know that there was cars involved in disability. Yeah.
Well, that's just a metaphor.
Yeah, I know.
I like it.
I got you.
We will help people with the initial application, get the process going. People also call us when they've had a denial. We'll do the reconsideration appeal, and we do plenty of hearings. 50% of our caseload is at the hearing level. Most of those cases are going to go in front of a judge. The average person does not want to go in front of a judge by themselves. It is always a good idea to contact an attorney because you're going to have a hearing with evidence. You need a brief. You need to know what evidence you need and what law to apply.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of moving parts to that. Right?
Right. You don't have to have an attorney to go before the Social Security Administration, and you don't have to have an attorney to file an application. But
right.
I like to think that we can keep the process moving in a safe and sound way, at least for people.
And somewhat expedited, though. Although, like you said, you could look up to 2 years. So
that is the average. That is the average wait time. Now, let me just throw out this because that's a little unfair to people that are several chronic and perhaps fatal illnesses.
Yeah.
Social Security does have a program called Compassion Allowance in which several diseases, conditions, for example, many stage 4 cancers, for example,
right.
might be on that list. We can fast track any case that meets one of those listings and get a decision within about 3 weeks.
Okay, yeah, definitely kind of like the emergency room version, right?
We're going to triage some conditions.
So talk to us about, in your position, you must run into, how do you balance and deal with the day-to-day, the emotional issues with the folks you're coming across? You're catching them at a very...
it's a tough time.
Right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, I'd like to think that I know all my clients, and I do. I like to know all their stories, and I like to know their stories, and they also have compelling issues, though we do a high-volume practice. It's still hands-on, so how do I balance it emotionally?
Yeah, can you turn that off at the end of the day?
Sometimes some of my clients I do get very invested in. It's hard not to. They have some compelling stories. Really, I try to set up some boundaries in terms of what can I help them with and what I can. Right. I try to just be the lawyer. I can't do financial advice. Nobody would want me to. I'm not a doctor, so I try to hand that off to other people. But I try to steer people in directions in which they can get the help they need. And many times they need governmental services. Many of our community health care clinics do a great job of taking care of the indigent that don't have access to health care. Many people don't know about that, steering them towards food stamps, homeless shelters.
Yeah, and it's probably a whole other episode or show when you talk about stories or issues, challenges when you involve all these different family members, right?
Well, that's true.
Ideally, you want to just deal with one person, but you have the in-laws, the outlaws.
One thing that I do like about this practice, it's not particularly adversarial. People actually are in need, and they are very grateful of the help you need. I find it's a sort of a quasi-social work legal practice, and so we're not really fighting too much.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We have a lot of divorce attorney lawyers that come through the show, and that's probably more in their wheelhouse.
It's not as contentious. What we're really trying to you're
trying there to help.
Certain judges are a little contentious, but other than that, it's a pretty.
Hey, now don't mention any names. We're trying to stay on the air there, Lisa. Yeah.
Okay, so, they know who they are. Yeah. I don't have to say it.
So tell our listeners the best way to find out, reach out to you in your practice.
Well, you can certainly find me at my blog, which is georgiadisabilitylawyerblog.com. That's a mouthful. You can contact me. You could just type in Lisa Smith Siegel on your Google search bar, and you can find me because hopefully I come up right away. You can contact me at 404-255-9838.
Cool. And spell Siegel for us, for those people that are typing right now.
It's S as in Sam, I as
and she's looking. Yeah, but you don't have to look at the board. She's looking at the board with her name on there.
You're right.
I could get it wrong.
You didn't give me my coffee this morning, so I really have better. My son. Here's a segue. My son once had a school project and he misspelled his last name.
Oh, wow.
We took a picture of it and put it on Facebook. It was so
nice.
funny. I hope he's listening today. No, he's in school. I hope he's practicing. It's Siegel to answer the question.
Thank you. Well, we had a whiteboard typo. I'm going to blame it on the whiteboard. We don't have a spell check on the whiteboard. Not really a spell check. It was more a typo on Jonathan's name. So we're going to speak to Jonathan in just a moment. So, Lisa, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Gip.
Thanks for your time and joining us here, and maybe a little follow-up roundtable conversation as well. And before we jump into our next guest, we just want to remind our listeners you're listening to Atlanta Legal Experts radio show. Rich Casanova here, filling the shoes. Well, hopefully they're flat shoes instead of high heels or whatever Emily might be wearing typically in the studio. But Emily-Rowell, our week-to-week host. And once again, our sponsors, Peachtree Offices. Find out about all their services, virtual offices, day offices, right here at peachtreeoffices.com. And 3A Law Practice, devoted to helping lawyers start and grow their business. That's at 3alawpracticemanagement.com. And finally, to our friends at Atlanta's John Marshall Law School. Been doing their good work for over 80 years, and you can visit them just at johnmarshall.edu. All right, so let's jump into our next guest right now. And Jonathan Mason, welcome back to the show. So far, so good?
So far, so good. I'm wide awake and
All right,
ready to go.
Nice, yeah. And you brought in a granddaddy of a camera right here. We're excited. We're going to be excited to see really professional photos for this show, as opposed to our. Normally we just sketch it out on the whiteboard and take a picture of stick figures or whatever. Yeah, so. All right, so let's chat a little bit and find out about Jonathan. So you're an attorney, a professor, and photographer. Therefore, the high-end camera here in our studio. You were born and raised, as we mentioned, in Maryland, surrounded by farm animals, tobacco fields. But you grew up as a music junkie at an early age. Spent summers in the tobacco fields to raise money for school clothes, and of course to buy some of your favorite albums.
That's right. And I still have those albums.
Well, yeah. What's on the short list of a few of those?
Well, of course. Michael Jackson,
all right, yeah,
Prince,
the King,
the really popular ones. I
right.
mean, I was 17 or 18,
right.
so I didn't really know the nuances. I had to kind of go with the main guys.
Yeah. Well, you can't go wrong with those guys there. And you attended Howard University, Stanford, and Georgetown Law, and now you own your own firm founded specifically to serve the needs of creative individuals and companies in the music, television, film, theater, dance industries. And publishing industries, but I don't see radio on here anywhere. Is that it must be left off the list? But can we add that to the list?
Absolutely, it's
all
on
right.
the list. I couldn't put everything.
Done deal.
But if I'd been thinking, that would have been number one.
No worries. Well, I just added it on the fly here. But speaking of that, with theater, television, film, we've been kicking around the idea about a Atlanta entertainment radio show. I mean, we're in the Mecca, other than out west somewhere, and there's a town in California somewhere that's pretty famous for movies.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it, maybe.
But they're doing a boatload of stuff here, right?
Yeah, we are, and I've actually thought about that before, and even on our news, like on our local news,
right.
I grew up around D.C., and there's this guy named Arch Campbell, and he's kind of a nutty
Not
reporter.
Archie Campbell.
No.
Okay, yeah.
But he used to cover entertainment events,
Yeah.
and it would be on the news,
Right.
and I was like, God, we don't even have anyone here, like in Atlanta, who goes out to these big events that we have on, and then one of our local news channel covers. So we don't need the news; we can just start it ourselves, right?
All right, done deal.
Yeah.
Well, we'll draw up the paperwork. Edwin, you draw up the paperwork for us, yeah.
Be happy to.
All right. So we just got a new show right there. But yeah, we've definitely entertained the idea of, no pun intended, of a Atlanta entertainment radio from the business perspective. Our perspective would be so much like all these movie deals going on, what kind of drives that. But enough about our future concepts. Let's talk about you right now. So also interesting on your resume is the highlight of your career to this point was representing a screenwriter during the O.J. Simpson trial. Whoa.
Absolutely. I was 3 years out of law school. I was working for the largest firm in North Carolina, which there's a benefit to working for a big firm. It's like when something big happens, they come to the big firm,
right,
and not solo guys like me,
right,
at least
yeah.
until you get a name for yourself.
Yeah.
And I was in my supervisor's office reporting on. If you're familiar with big firms, they send you off to do some research project. You write a memo, and then you go in and you report your findings.
Right.
And I was doing that just ho-hum,
Yeah.
and we got a call from another attorney in the firm.
phone call came
We
in.
got the phone call.
The call.
And it was one of those, like when someone asks you, what are you doing Saturday night? Right. And you don't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing.
It depends, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was exactly that call. And my supervisor whispers to me, Jonathan, take notes. I'm going to get you to handle this. And I'm like, oh, God, something else.
Right.
And then the other attorney starts describing it, and it's to work on this situation, the O.J. case, where this lady who lived in North Carolina had a lot of materials that were very crucial to the defense to discredit the lead
Right,
detective,
critical. Wow.
who said he'd never used a certain word on the stand, and she had materials that could contradict that. And so it turned into this huge hearing in North Carolina, and Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey were
really?
there.
Wow.
People were lining the streets with signs, and it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean that was before really the mega presence of the internet.
Absolutely,
right?
And I still have the video where like I recorded it all on
VHS
VHS. I have actually converted it at least to DVD. But when you watch it and you watch the credits on the
Yeah.
shows, what internet presence there was like Prodigy.net and maybe AOL. Like all the email addresses were Prodigy and AOL.
That's a flashback. Yeah, you need to put that on YouTube. That transfer that DVD.
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
You need to do
Actually.
that. It'd get a lot of traction. My only OJ story was very short. I was in Barcelona for the Olympics, and employed by a Cunard Cruise Line embarkation staff. And OJ was on board. It was all VIP. I mean, these were the global presidents of the brands like American Express, Worldwide, what have you. And OJ and I were both in the buffet line, but
Oh, wow.
but that was about it. I think he was just using a fork and a spoon at the time, so I was fine. But meanwhile, so entertainment law, and you're a current professor at Atlanta John Marshall Law School.
I was there until last semester.
Okay,
So-
from 2008.
Right, right, exactly. Started in 2008, and
Well,
it did
coincident-
entertainment law, and I actually covered a lot within that: trademark, copyright, film, TV, music publishing. So kept me on my toes, because those students are tough out there. They ask a lot of tough questions.
And the headline to your bio here is you also, in addition to publishing, photographer, what have you, background actor, and even appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Now, you got to tell that story.
Well,
You didn't jump on the couch, did you?
no, I wasn't on the couch, fortunately. It's kind of an embarrassing story in a way,
Well, we
but
could-
Oprah did this show in 2007 on the best places to find single men over 35.
All right.
And so they went out to, I guess, find some
Right,
of these
yeah.
example
Right,
guys. And someone I knew just happened to hear about it and said, oh, you should send your stuff in.
Right.
So they, I don't know, I got
Wow,
picked, and there were 50 guys, and they flew us in and
Dang.
picked us up in limos, and they took us shopping to get outfits for the show. They took
Oh,
us
nice.
They took us to the Gap on
All right.
Michigan Avenue, and we had stylists there. And it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, that was way before Tinder and
yeah.
and what was the other before all the social media, reality TV shows, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you're an innovator and ahead of the curve, it seems to be. So now let's get down to business here. So talk to us about why entertainment law.
Well, as you kind of mentioned in my bio, I grew up a music lover. I used to admire people like Berry Gordy, founded
Right.
Motown, and I was like, and actually I tried to be a musician. I used to play trumpet,
Okay.
and I liked playing trumpet, but I wasn't. I had to face it. I wasn't good enough to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like a
At that level.
make a living as a musician. I mean, I was okay. I couldn't sing, so that wasn't going to work. So I said, you know what, let me get in it maybe from the business
Right.
side. And I remember the last time I played trumpet, somehow I got hooked up with the local American Legion, and they asked me to play taps,
Okay.
which is just the saddest song you
Oh,
can
yeah,
possibly
right.
imagine. Taps at a funeral when I'm in middle school.
Right. Oh, wow.
And one day I did it, and it was freezing cold. And taps is an extremely hard song to play.
Really?
And has some really high notes at the
Yeah.
end. And I said, I promise, if I get through it this time, I'm never playing this again.
Exactly.
And I kind of just dropped the whole music, the actual being a musician thing after that. I was kind of scarred by that whole experience. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to be in the industry, but I'll just have to get into it from the business side.
Business, yeah. I know you might appreciate this as a photographer. I've dabbled in it over the years, done a little bit of, in college we did photography in the darkroom, developing
Yeah, absolutely.
photos, all that good stuff. But I did a couple of weddings, and the pressure was just too much because there's no do-overs.
Yeah, I've done
on that,
exactly.
yeah.
And I feel the
said,
same exact way about
no,
weddings.
thank
It's
you.
like, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So talk to us about changes in entertainment law in the industry since you've been in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably, I mean, you can really, I would trace it back to, the rise of the internet and downloading music. I'm not going to mention any specific websites, but we probably
Friendster or no, that was the one before that.
Napster.
Napster, there you go.
Yeah. So prior to that, well, even if you go back before that, I saw this video once that said that the record business used to be the perfect business because the product was vinyl.
Right.
It would break. It would wear out. If you couldn't copy it
couldn't
easily.
replicate it.
If you loaned it to someone and they didn't, you had to get, sometimes you got it back, sometimes you didn't. So you find yourself having to buy an album 2 or 3 times, and you had to buy the whole album. You couldn't buy, well, maybe they sold singles, but it wasn't as big. The mindset was to buy albums. So then we went to cassettes, and then we went to CDs, and then now we're in download. Well, people don't even really download as much anymore now. It's a streaming world now with Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music now.
I know, hit the market.
So with that, the revenues for the music companies have just plummeted. And so as a result, the income for like the participants has, taken a dive as well. So for people like me, and a lot of entertainment lawyers, sometimes they charge on a percentage, or even if they don't, the clients just aren't making as much as they used to. And so, it's just gone. And now, people release singles, and like I said, it's not even really a download world anymore. It's like, people don't even, I used to have my phone full of music files, and now I don't even need that.
It does make it very challenging to monetize that. But you talking about the record, you just skipped right over the 8-track, but that's okay.
I remember. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Those are really antiquated.
Yeah, I remember in Miami, our cousins had VWs, and we'd put the 8-track in there. But meanwhile, that's an interesting thing about the business model of the LP, right? And not only that, the royalties, because that's kind of the holy grail. If you can develop a product, and a lot of authors are very successful at this, aka Chicken Soup for the Soul. He's generated 150 spinoffs of that one title, right?
Right.
And like Robert Kiyosaki and these guys, but an album, you're right, it scratches. There's a shelf life to it,
right?
A book, you can still go buy to a used bookstore and buy Dale Carnegie's book, right?
Right. Exactly.
And it can be passed around for generations. And an album, if you take care of it, but then, and you can't duplicate it. So that's. But you're not recommending folks get back into the album business.
Oh no, I'm not. But what happened is the record company said, we got to figure out other ways to make money. So then they started doing these deals, which were all inclusive. They referred to them as 360 deals, where they said, we're making you a big star, so we're going to start taking a percentage of your money you make from TV, from your books, from your any other kind of business, that clothing lines, your music publishing, your touring. So we're not just going to concentrate on money from your album sales. We're going to take money from
your brand,
your whole brand, because we create your brand. And
especially when the star is early and starving, not even the starving artist, but just early in their career, they may not know any better, or they can't foresee the future. And there's many examples, but I think Billy Joel was probably where he sold off a lot of his rights, and for 20 years, the whoever owned that, right?
Right, exactly.
And he had to buy it out for a fortune.
That's true. And there's actually like videos on YouTube, like of Paul McCartney talking about how when the Beatles first started out, they thought that songs were owned by the universe, but believe me, there was someone around them who knew that songs
innocent
weren't.
Days, those young Beatles.
Yeah, exactly. And we all probably famously know the story of Michael Jackson buying the Beatles catalog. So even they, a super group like that, they were starting out. They didn't understand all the intricacies of business law, and that stuff has long-term implications. He talks about having to pay royalties to play his own songs at a show.
That's
kind of crazy.
It is bizarre. That's why we don't play any music here. I understand for broadcasting, it's like $250,000 for the BMI, license arrangements, and ASCAP as well. So talk to us about what's the most rewarding part of your practice?
Well, I have a soft spot for helping the small guys. And so now with technology, people can create amazing music and even films off of their kitchen tables, out of their basements, their home studios. So to help someone spawn that idea and to do it, with all the proper paperwork and everything is it's really rewarding. A specific example is I had a relatively unknown client, but he wrote a song that he thought was going to be perfect for a major, actually one of the Fast and Furious movies.
Oh, wow.
And so we found a way to get the song to the music supervisor. They loved it. We had some kind of tense negotiations because we didn't have any leverage. So,
Yeah.
you can't be too greedy.
You got to be creative.
But we got the song in on the score of the movie, and so everybody's leaving when and I'm like, no, I've got to stay to see the credits,
Right?
Because I want to see my client's name on that screen.
Oh, yeah.
And those credits, and I just sat there, and it just it's the best
Oh,
feeling.
big time. Yeah, the feeling. And that lives in perpetuity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If it was these days, it was a while ago, I would have my cell phone there and take a picture of the screen, the credit on the screen.
Big time. All right, so tell our folks what's the best way to find out about you and reach out to you for your services.
Sure. My website is atlshowbizlaw.com. It's SHOBIZ. Well, ATL like Atlanta. SHOBIZ.com. I also use that on Twitter, so I tweet a lot of helpful information about the entertainment industry, so at ATL, Showbiz Law.
Right.
If you want to pick up the phone and call me, it's 404-920-8040.
All right, well, Jonathan, a pleasure having you here in the studio and on the show, and just a interesting backstory, but also more pertinent to business, your wealth of knowledge and expertise in that area as well. And we'll talk later about the show and maybe some trademark questions in the follow-up segment.
All right. Thank you.
All right, absolutely. So joining us in the studio now, we'd like to say our anchor man, kind of bring us home here and wrap it all together. And Edwin, remind our listeners how you pronounce your last name.
Scalar.
Scalar, that's what I was going to say. So Edwin Scalar, so you're the founding partner of Scalar and Heim, LLC, litigation boutique headquartered in Buckhead, right here out our window, possibly,
Yes.
in the neighborhood.
Resurgence Plaza.
Okay, nice. And you represent clients in complex business disputes, often related to legal malpractice, securities, intellectual property, and estate litigation. I definitely want to talk about some, if you have an intellectual property story to share. But you're a graduate of you're a graduate of Emory Law School. You began your career as a trial attorney in the United States Army. Thank you for your service there, and stationed in the Military District of Washington in Washington. You were a special assistant United States attorney and prosecuted cases for special jurisdiction, including the White House. So talk to us. You have a couple of White House or foreign embassy stories. How much time there?
4 years. That was right out of law school. I knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer. That's a great way to get trial experience as an assistant U.S. attorney. And I was fortunate to have President Reagan select me to be the special prosecutor for the White House, the embassies, CIA, the Pentagon, and some other sensitive areas in D.C.
Wow, that's pretty. I was going to ask who was the president at the time. So all under Reagan then?
The first few months under President Carter, but the other 3.5 years under President Reagan.
Wow. Any much face-to-face time there, or
A little bit.
a little bit? Yeah.
Got to eat some jelly beans.
Well, I was going to ask you that proverbial question, but yeah. So, well, I do have. I'm a fan of Reagan, but let's get into your talking points here. But you also spent several years litigation in the Department of Atlanta office of the global law firm Jones Day. Talk to us about that.
Well, Jones Day at the time was the world's largest firm. They acquired my old firm, Hansel and Post, that was a large firm here in Atlanta. And I was there for several years after I came back to Atlanta.
The world's world's largest law firm.
Back then,
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what would that look like? I mean, how many people are we talking about? What type of clients are they dealing with?
I think there were about 1,400 lawyers in something like 10 different countries.
And whom some of their clients be at the
The
time?
world's largest companies.
I mean, that's and what was your position there?
I was a litigator
And
in the Atlanta office.
okay. So talk to us about issues and claims that lead to legal malpractice.
Well, lawyers make mistakes.
Serious?
Just like
Real?
everyone else, yes. And sometimes those mistakes can be extremely costly. One of our larger cases here in recent years, we represented General Electric and Bank of New York Mellon and some other clients who were suing Atlanta's largest firm, Alston and Bird, because of a botched financing transaction for a venture capital fund.
And to the tune of what type of numbers we're talking?
Well, the allegations of damages were many millions of dollars.
Wow. And how long what might you spend on something on a case like that?
That case took a few years. It was bitterly fought. There was approximately 40 to 50 fully briefed motions. We had 2 different special masters who were basically signed by the judge to decide issues in the case. And they were fighting as hard as they could, and finally they appealed to the Georgia Court of Appeals, and they lost that, and then they settled the case.
So when you're dealing on a case of that magnitude, is it possible to handle any other case at that time, or is that just pretty much all your energy?
We have a small firm.
Right.
So usually we have a very few cases.
Right.
Unlike many law firms that have a large volume of cases, we generally take very large cases, but very few of them.
Okay.
So at any given time, we'll have anywhere from 5 to 7 or 8 cases.
Right.
That's about all we can handle.
Sure. And do well. Right.
Sure.
What advice might you now? It's got to be challenging as a member of the bar handling cases against other attorneys, right? I mean, that's tricky. Is an understatement. Yes or yes?
Well, I guess it depends on your personality.
Okay.
People have emotions. They get upset. They don't like to be sued. That's obvious. But, the reality is, like doctors, architects, other professionals, and everybody else that's ever been born,
right,
lawyers make mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are just inadvertence, where they don't do something they should have done. Sometimes they were born out of, frankly, a desire to do more work than they're capable of doing, and they don't pay attention to a case and miss a filing deadline. It happens a lot. Sometimes lawyers take a case and they're not organized. They don't get back to the client. Time goes by. Statutes of limitations expire. All that happens, and those clients need lawyers to represent them against other lawyers.
I think the only person that has never made a mistake that I can think of is Donald Trump, at least according to him, right?
Oh, he's made plenty of mistakes.
but he wouldn't admit to any of those, right? So
a lot of people don't admit to their mistakes.
Yeah.
That's why you need lawyers to sue them.
Exactly, to clarify, to tell you what your mistakes are, yeah. All right, so talk to us about advice you'd give lawyers facing malpractice or feel they've done something that could result in a problem or an issue.
Well,
I mean, what's on the short list?
The best advice is work hard, organize yourself, don't make the mistake in the first place. And those are simple things,
right?
But they're hard things.
Yep.
Because people don't like working hard. They would rather get off early and go play a round of golf or go drink a beer or whatever it is people do.
Right.
And doing something right means it's going to be hard.
Right.
You have to work hard. You have to give it the correct amount of time. You have to organize yourself. Some people don't want to work hard. Some people are not organized. And so if you don't want to be a defendant in a legal malpractice case, make sure your practice is well organized, that you keep a calendar so you know where your deadlines are. That's the best way not to get sued.
Well, I think it is kind of human nature to look for that shortcut, right? Or, but sometimes the The right path, like you said, takes that extra effort in the short run, but long term, it's going to benefit you.
Well, hopefully. I mean, some people would disagree with that. There are thousands and thousands of lawyers who take massive numbers of cases and, farm them out to their paralegals and
Right.
their staff, and they run them through sort of a factory, and they make a lot of mistakes. And there are other lawyers like me that don't take as many cases and focus a lot on a single case. And I think that's a better way to get a good result, but it's a more expensive way. Everything costs.
Right.
Everything has its cost.
Well, if you do that, I guess the old adage, if you do that high enough volume and you make some mistakes along the way, that's kind of built into their business model, right?
Yes.
They just absorb that. They know that up front, right?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Yeah. So talk to us about technology. We're talking to Jonathan, the evolution of the music industry, and from vinyl to streaming. What have you seen in terms of technology, for better or for worse, regarding the landscape, for cases that you've worked on?
Probably the biggest impact technology has had on my practice is the internet and email. I used to go to work. I could focus on a particular issue or drafting a particular brief or making a particular argument, and my computer wasn't going crazy all day long with emails coming in. If a client had a question, they would call me on the phone. In 2 or 3 minutes, we could have a conversation. It's done. Now they don't do that.
Right.
Nobody wants to use the phone. They use the email.
Right.
And so I get hundreds of emails a day.
Right.
And I keep telling my clients, look, it's expensive to have me email you back.
Right.
I don't type very fast. Email's got wonderful uses. If I
Right.
have to send out a message to 10 different people,
Yeah.
you hit a button, they
Right.
all get it.
Right.
If you need to attach documents, it's extremely helpful. But if you just have a question or a series of questions, pick up the phone, call me, in 2 or 3 minutes, we'll deal with it. But they don't want it. Everybody's emailing, so it's made my day much more challenging. I get my thought process work done at night, weekends, and during the day, I'm busy responding
Right.
to client requests and
Just
all
bombard-
that on the internet
Inundated.
all day long.
Now, talk to us from the legal perspective of emails. I'm kind of curious of the boon and bang, or the yin and yang, or whatever you want to do there. Is that in many cases creates a paper trail and something that can be held up and documentation as opposed to a phone call? I mean, can that work for or against you, right? But they could also be manipulated, right? So, I mean, you can say this person sent you that email. You can just copy and paste and forward it, or I don't know that how much validity they can say with absolute certainty that just because it's on a computer screen, right? Yes. I mean, what were your thoughts on
Well, the
that
emails can be
correspondence?
tracked electronically, so emails are a wonderful tool for discovering truth.
Okay.
And that's ultimately what you're supposed to be doing in litigation,
Right,
is
right.
discovering truth. And people say things in emails that they're not willing to put in a letter.
Right, right.
And as you can see from the news the last 20 years, emails contain a lot of great information, and they ultimately reveal truth. And it's extremely helpful.
Yeah, they can save you or put you under. And we usually don't talk too much politics here, but I was listening on the radio on the way over this morning about Hillary Clinton. Her whole campaign now is up in the air based on her choices regarding email correspondence.
People don't do those things by mistake, certainly not a Clinton. She had a private server because she wanted to keep her emails to herself and not release them to the public.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And she got caught, and now she's dealing with it.
And her current opponent is, almost caught up with her. I'm trying to think of the guy's name.
Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, is almost neck and neck in the polls. And now we got Biden was in town over the weekend, whatever, throwing his hat in the ring. But we're not supposed to talk politics. But because of your background with Reagan and the White House and all the litigation you've done in that arena, So is there regarding the email, that's very tricky, right?
Yeah, it's going to cause her problems. But, we all realize the truth of this. It's very difficult to find an honest politician anywhere in America of any party.
Yeah, that's why Trump threw his hat in the ring, or his hair in the ring, yeah.
It's just, talking about music, one of my favorite songs is a Billy Joel song titled Honesty.
Oh, yeah. That's a
I
great
love
tune,
that song because honesty is very rarely heard anymore.
Right.
We live in a world of massive corruption, not just from officials, but from everyone.
And manipulation of the truth, like you said. I mean, that's your role is to find that truth. Compelling issues and your background and great insight into these topics. How would folks find out about your firm and reach out to you? Don't send you an email, though, right? Don't give out your email address, man.
Most of our work comes from word of mouth,
Okay.
but these days some actually does come from the internet.
Sure.
Our web address is atlantalawfirm.net. There's a lot of information there and background on myself and my partner. They can call us at 404-888-0100 if they still make telephone calls.
Right.
My email address is on our website. So.
Right. Nice. Use that wisely, yeah. So, people do still make phone calls. Every once in a while I'm shocked when the phone rings over here. But so maybe on my way home I'm going to grab my car phone and give you a call. So we're just about out of time here for this episode of Atlanta Legal Experts. A couple minutes remaining. I don't know if there's any follow-up or cross conversations or questions amongst our guests here. If not, I would like to just maybe go around real quick and if you would just let our listeners know one more time. We'll start with Lisa. How folks find out about you. But share with us, take your business hat off, your after hours on the weekend. What do you like to do in terms of community projects? Is there an association that you're passionate about? Where's your Zen place or family? What kind of takes you away from work, a book or a destination you like to go to? Or
Well, thanks, Rich. That's a great question. I always love to take that hat off, but I like to put it on and take it off in the middle of the day. Mostly I'm a mom, so I've got a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they've kept me busy most of the time, the two boys. I run a couple of book clubs. I run a book club with friends, and then I am active in my synagogue, so also run the Sisterhood Book Club there. Love to read. Travel's good, but between that and managing my own practice, there's not a lot of that. And I like my dog. My dog and I walk every day.
Oh, really?
So
what's your dog's name?
Maggie. Shout out to Maggie at home. I hope she's listening.
Right. Maggie, if you're listening, don't get in the trash can there. Yes, stand down.
But you can get in touch with me again at Georgia Disability Lawyer Blog. You could Google Lisa Smith Siegel, and I usually pop up in a variety of locations: Facebook, Twitter, etc. I'd like to have a shout out to Matt Strozziak, who helps me with my internet marketing, because he does a great job making sure that people can find me on the internet. Most of my clients actually do find me on the internet, so that is helpful. Though they use their phone too, so it's good to give a phone call, and you can call me at 404-255-9838.
Yeah, I think Matt was here last week in the studio.
He is a great
He's awesome.
proven law marketing. Yes, fantastic.
Big time. And with 19 and 6-year-old, you're just a few years away from empty nester, right? So
I'm getting close.
Enjoy the full
I'm getting
plate.
more books to be read.
Yeah, nice. Thanks again, Lisa, for being on the show. And Jonathan, what do you do when you're not working on legal issues?
Sure. This is probably a trademark infringement, but
All right.
the phrase came to mind. Are you ready for some football?
Nice.
A football fanatic, college and pro.
Oh,
so,
big time.
This time of the year, it's just...
Falcons are 2 for 2, right, in the preseason.
Oh, my goodness. It's so exciting. But, I kind of stick with my home teams, even though one of them's good, one of them's not so good.
Who are those folks?
Well, Redskins and Ravens secondarily.
So it doesn't start with an R, you're not interested.
Well, but I follow everyone.
Yeah.
But as far as community, I'm about to start again this year on volunteering with Everybody Wins. It's a great local, it's not a local organization, it's a national organization. It's a reading program.
Okay.
And they match you with a student at a who's below their reading level at an elementary school. You do it on their lunch break. It takes about a half hour of your time.
Wow.
You meet them in the cafeteria. You get a book off the cart and you read, and I'm telling you, it's so rewarding. So that'll probably be starting up next month. So I'm excited about that as well.
Nice.
And for people who want to get in touch with me, again, it's atlshowbizlaw.com, and also that same handle on Twitter at atlshowbizlaw.
And stay tuned for Jonathan's show here at the Buckhead Studio for
coming soon.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. And Edwin?
Well, I have 3 children and a grandchild.
Oh, wow.
So they're fun and keep me busy. As far as community, I would say since the days of Vietnam, and I was very young then, I've been railing to anyone who will listen to me about the decay in the morals and honesty of America.
Wow.
And people are tired of hearing me say it, but I don't stop. I keep going because I take my citizenship seriously, and I see my country going the wrong direction, and I try to do something about it.
Still the greatest country there is, but if you don't keep your eye on the ball, right?
Well,
as Rome fell.
I hear people say that all the time. Have you been to every country on the planet? Do you really know we're the best country on earth? Maybe we are. I don't know.
Yeah,
but, even saying it seems to me to be just a little bit of arrogance and braggadocious. I just, we're not good enough, and we need to be a lot better.
No, I concur.
Let's make America great again.
Yeah, there you go. Trump, you need to come on the show because apparently we're giving you way too many plugs here. Yeah. So, and remind our listeners again how they would reach out to you.
AtlantaLawFirm.net.
Perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, another great show here for Atlanta Legal Experts, and tune in next week. Same show, same hour, and more exciting, compelling stories. We'll see you again next week here in the studio.